Hi, my name is Benedict. This video is answering that eternal, always asked over and over again, how do I make my mix blam? And a lot of people miss the basics. A lot of people miss the basics because they're busy thinking that you get blam and mixes from advanced techniques, and I can tell you, you really don't. While those advanced techniques might deliver something interesting in a particular situation, if you don't have the basics, they'll actually just make things sound worse, like the number of mixes that I hear that are side-chained, ducked, and they just and it makes the mix sound smaller, even though they think it's louder overall. So it's a different approach. Let me give you a sense of what we can look at. Now, again, caveat, really important. This is not about whether you like this piece of music. It's about in the contrast between the A and the B, between the did nothing and did the right things. So here's the very basic loop. Yes, it clearly is just chopped and looped. This is the before. It's pretty flat. This is the after. Pretty lively now. Which are you more likely to pay attention to on the radio? This or this? What I hope you notice in the difference is merely that, there's no merely about it, but in the number 2 button, we've got a lot of excitement, we've got a lot of dynamic, a lot of movement, a lot of activity, of richness, and that's what you're looking for. That's the rock and roll bit. The performance on its own is far from ideal, but with some minor changes, we've got a massive difference. So the number one question has to be an understanding of what is mixing. Mixing is creating an illusion via balance. It is not about making everything equal and perfectly heard and as loud as possible based on the luffs that Spotify tell us we're supposed to have this month. That is BS. And this technical approach to mixing is why so many people are sailing straight past where they want or need to be, or more to the point where their songs want and need to be interesting. There are plenty of records out there with mixes that technically we could say are awful. A lot of early EBM, like Neon Judgment, was awful in terms of sound. Meatloaf's Bat Out of Hell, massive record, awesome piece of work, not particularly charming mix. A lot of Jethro Tull is not particularly wonderful, lovely mixing. It's not big and glossy like a Pink Floyd record or a Cliffy Bastard record. But does it make those any less? Has it reduced the number of fans for any of those? Well, remember, Bat Out of Hell was one of the biggest records ever, stayed in the public consciousness for so long, and let me tell you, it was nothing to do with the mixing. The mixing gets the job done. So, mixing is building the right illusion via balance. If you don't understand that, really take some time to understand that. It does mean getting rid of, unlearning this idea that mixing is a pile of techniques or a pile of technical things getting the right knob on the right piece of gear. That is the complete opposite of mixing. Mixing is building the illusion that this song needs via balance. By balance, it's a case of being relative. So to borrow from a Zen koan, some guy goes to the master and asks, what's the secret to Zen? How do I get this really quickly and easily? Remind you, anyone in music forums? And ultimately, the Zen master points to a couple of bamboo stalks, and he says, oh, what a long one this is. Oh, what a short one this is. And the student's like, because he thinks that he's supposed to hear something full and complex and bizarre and producery. So he misses the point. The reality is that the Zen master is simply pointing to understanding the difference, acknowledging, being comfortable with that there is a difference. And there's a contrast, and this is what creates the relationship. This is the secret to mixing, is understanding balance, which is the relationship between things. So, what do we need to do to make sure that we can get a good mix? This is put forward quite a lot of times, and then people go and completely do the opposite. Number one is we need to be sure we have a vibrant performance. Now, when we listen to this, we really don't have a very vibrant performance. Yes, there's the issue where the synth seems to start again here, but that's just because we've looped something. But it is flat as a biscuit in terms of performance. There is no move, there's no groove, there's no sense of story in that. What we need to do is to look at how to take this. Let's just pop the drums in solo and turn off so that we're getting the same result. And I have some performance stuff happening here. It's using Reason's groove features, but work out how to do this in your own DAW. So now we turn that off. This is flat as a biscuit. It's not particularly exciting. If we turn on the groove, now it moves. The difference is subtle, and you may even initially prefer the flat version. Let me tell you how I got this groove here, and this is from somebody who cannot play drums and has a very loose sense of timing. I played this in. So that's me going, okay, here is a groove. Now I applied it, and I applied it with a very small amount. So here, with no groove, not only have we got some of those level differences, like the volume velocity differences, but we've got some of that movement of the performance that I made. If I were a far better drummer, if I were John Bonham, then we could go 1 for 1, like 100% of my groove. But because I know that I am, well, a disaster, then I've said, okay, I'm only going to take 5-10% of my groove because there is a groove there. So I just record until I feel like I've got a groove that might represent this piece, and then I apply it. It is loose as a goose, but it gives us the feeling of performance. The second thing that I have done, and this is a feature of Goran Groove's handy drums, there is a slider thingy. Listen to what happens to the hi-hats. They're flat. We can now see that they're opening and closing, meaning that we have some kind of groove. Again, this is not thought through in particular terms as to how this goes. Matter of fact, I programmed it upside down because I'd forgotten which order it worked in, but we've now got movement from the groove to the movement that their built-in hi-hat opening-closey thing delivers. So we've now got a far better performance than we had before. This is really important. If you don't have a vibrant performance, then you will have a lot of difficulties making it improve. You'll make it louder, but you won't make it improve. You won't make it more vibrant. So again, absolutely flat. A lot more vibrant. It has a sense of illusion around it. There's some story in there. So number one is be sure to have a vibrant performance. If you don't have a vibrant performance, fix that. Now your performance again does not need to be perfect. Some of the most amazing records out there have what these days people will call imperfect performances. You know, a number of times I've seen people slagging off, say, Jimi Hendrix for being a loose, sloppy guitar player. No, he had a wonderful sense of feel and time. Was he the most technically advanced? Like, could he point to notes and name 47th chord inversion? No, but it was irrelevant because he was a bluesman. He was a tremendous natural performer. So find how to tell your story with a tremendous natural story attached to it. And that way you can transition through almost any limit you have, so long as you are not focusing on fear. One of the biggest problems is people are worried about, is this technically right? Is it going to get caught and fixed by auto-tune, by Melodyne? That's wrong. Nobody wants to hear that. What they want to hear is something like, and grabs you. You know, a girl that smiles at you is immediately more sexy than one that's got out here, who doesn't smile ever. Smiling is a thing that smart girls learn to do. The wrong kind of girls learn to give other signals that make you think that they're more interesting, but that's not a genuine smile. A genuine smile will win, hands down, every single time. You can flip that around if you are a girl and heterosexual or whatever. It's nothing to do with that. Understand the true point that's being given there. Then we mix to build the scene and story. In terms of what I have done here, let's go back just to our drums. Turn this off. I've put 3 stages in here. Most times I only need 2 stages, but because I've used the Handy Drum Studio, which are very, very dry, and that's deliberate, I need to put a room into them. So I've put them into a room. This guy is available for a couple of dollars on Ko-fi. The other devices which I'm going to show, I've not actually released. They're only just made. This was me testing them. If you are interested, then please comment here. If I get enough interest, if I get enough people talking to me about them, then I'll put them up on Ko-fi for a couple of dollars each as well. They are designed really for me, for my uses, but if they work for me, they're going to work for anybody. So we create a space. The next thing is compression. The second part of what I've added is this compression. No compression. Compression. You might go, but there's not a lot of difference. No, there is a fair amount of difference, but it's about creating more punch and helping to emphasize the groove of this drum pattern. So I've got a really pretty slow attack here, a little bit of hold with the release, making sure that the low end of that kick isn't doing too much damage, and then a fairly heavy amount of to make it do what I want it to do. So flat. Grooved. I'm really looking for groove more than level, but by having a more interesting groove, a more dynamic groove, then it sounds a lot louder, a lot more engaging. I've tried to keep levels fairly even, but I'm not fanatical or anal about that kind of stuff. You should know when things are better. If you don't, then you just haven't developed your feel properly yet. And if you don't naturally have that feel, then don't keep pushing against a brick wall. Otherwise, that's like me going into one World Rally Championship race after another when I can't drive like that. Because all I'm going to do is drive off the road and break bones every single race, and I'm never going to win. It's going in the wrong direction. Sooner or later, somebody is going to go, Benedict, you don't belong on this track. You don't belong here. Why don't you find what you're good at and go do that? All right, so compression. And then this fella, which is a drive unit. So you can hear that this has suddenly got a lot more meaty. By putting the compression first, we do create a little less of constant loud, which means that constant loud means that it's more going to be splatty. By reducing the time in which our transients are there, then we can actually push a little harder, which means we can bring our overall level of feel up, which we notice here. Now, speaking of level, it's the thing I want to show you. Nothing being done, we're tripping this compressor, and we're tripping our limiter. We're a couple of dB over. Once we put in these, notice how this drops, and yet it sounds and feels louder. So it's not about getting the highest numbers that you can, it's about getting the most dynamic. Remember, mixing is illusion via balance. This is a great example of maximum illusion. So we get that feeling of like, wow, this is big. And that's by taking this reverb, pushing it into the compressor, and then pushing it into this drive unit, which is simply another way of compressing our levels and adding a little bit more, harmonics, distortion, what have you, to make it come forward and feel a lot louder, because we hear that distortion in there and go, oh, that must be really loud, it's a little bit distorted. So that's how we've maximized with compression, a bit of drive, and making sure that we put some space around it to make those drums feel really big. So if we just take these guys, so it's creating the right groove, creating the right groove through compression, like highlighting the groove that's already there from the players, and embiggening it. There are different techniques for embiggening, but this is a pretty standard sort of approach. The drive wasn't done quite the same back in the old days of a Neva and SSL, but it was still happening with preamps or even people using similar sorts of things to create that kind of result. The bass here, again, it's got that groove. Compressed to find a point at which it tells its story best, which is the bum 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 bum, not to make it so that it's all loud all the time. I do hear a lot of that. People make their bass line and it's all loud all the time, thinking, well, but that's bigger, and it's like, no, it's the contrast. Remember, mixing is balance. So it's the difference between it being there and not being there that creates that feeling of so that helps with that. And then again, this just adds a little bit of drive and a little bit of oomph to the situation. See how that bass line goes a little flat and therefore starts to become easy to ignore. Now it grooves a lot better and it's much more dramatic because we've created a stronger sense of, oh, look what a short one that is, oh, look what a tall one that is. We've created a sense of contrast and balance in here. The last sound that we have is pad. Now these were initially designed, particularly the Special Driver 2, because I've obviously made a Special Driver 1 and an SD82, so I've made these sorts of things a few times, but the problem is most drive units are too distorty. This can get very distorty, but they don't work well with pads. Europa is a wonderful synth, but it's a very digital synth, so it can come out quite flat if you're not careful. So the compressor here helps actually even that sound out. And the drive adds a little bit of leveling, just a little bit, but it's also adding nice harmonics and a nice sense of being together. Again, that feeling of being a little overdriven. The compression just evens what's going into here. So it spends a little less time on the loud bits. Therefore, you can push a little bit harder and you get an overall more even feel. So if we're back into the mix, no processing, feels rather flat and easy to ignore. The compressor actually brightens it up, makes it a lot nicer to use. There's a little bit of wave shaping that goes on inside that compressor. And then the actual wave shaper on top evens things out a little bit more. So we've now got a very rich, vibrant sound overall. Now there's no interaction in terms of mix, there's no bussing, there's no mastering per se. This is just doing this within the mix. So again, we've got flat, hard to want to engage with because there's no story in here. to a more vibrant grooving performance. Sounds that feel big and rich and engaging. That is what mixing is about. So again, if this comes naturally to you, brilliant. If not, accept that and work out what does come naturally to you and make more of that, and then engage somebody who does know how to do this stuff. Because if you don't have it come naturally to you, chances are you'll never be good at it. Just as I say, I am 999% confident that I will never be a good rally driver. I will never be a good surfer. I tried for a year. I was terrible at it at the end of a year as I was when I started. I did not improve. Could I have improved if I'd had the right teacher? A little bit, but I would have only ever gotten maybe 10% better. I never would have become Kelly Slater because I am not set to be a surfer. So I just simply did it for fun. I paddled out and flapped around in the waves, and that was it. I accepted that I wasn't a surfer. I didn't try to make anything more of my abilities as a surfer because there are things that I can do that I can make more of, like mixing, because I understand this stuff innately. So again, make sure if you don't really grok the whole thing of mixing is building the illusion via balance, via contrast. Oh, what a long one this is, oh, what a short one this is. Then find somebody, work with somebody who does have that. Otherwise, then get your tools. Reverb is a big part of embiggening a sound, but we really are primarily working here with these guys, which is to enhance the groove once we've got a good performance groove. If we don't have a good performance groove, we shouldn't have anything on tape. Thinking you can fix it in the mix either via mellow tune or flex time or whatever is unmitigated BS. It will not work out. You'll end up with something that's flat and weird and wrong. And while you may go, but it sounds like other things I hear in forums, yes, because you're only setting your benchmark as people who are making bad work. Remember, your benchmark needs to be great work. And so great work should be stuff that stood the test of time, of decades. The Eagles are great work because 30, 40 years later, 50 years later, we still value that tremendously for very good reason. Same with the Beatles. Even though I'm not a massive Beatles fan, that work is excellent as a whole. Even their early stuff where they're sort of trying to be a rock and roll band and a little flat, it is still better than most. So compression to enhance the groove once you've got a good one, and a little bit of drive to help embiggen the feeling that you have developed. And if appropriate, use of reverbs or echoes. I talk a lot more about echoes, but I've put a reverb in here simply because they're drums. But within my own mixes, I will often use echoes in this spot as well. I will use echoes on the individual instruments to help place them. But that's just another layer of complex. But just with these two alone, again, hear the massive difference that you get between this, which is a flat performance with no mixing, or very poor mixing, and this, which is a vibrant performance with good basics in terms of enhancing the groove and embiggening the sound. If you have any questions, particularly if you're interested in getting your sticky fingers on 1066 compressor or Special Driver 2, then down below, if you're looking to hire me, then please reach out via my site, work out what I do, what I'm good at. If you've watched this far, you've got a fair understanding of that probably already. And if I've added value to your life, I'm not going to ask you to subscribe. You're going to do that whether you do or don't. But I am going to ask you to go over to coffee and give me a couple of dollars because I have added value to your life. All right, get out there, try this, have fun.